All right, today we are with Cynthia Hash, principal broker with Fine Homes Realty, and also the host of the podcast, The Realty of Real Estate. Well, that sounds,
Reality.
yeah, the reality. I was like, that, I didn't say that right. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. Excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to kind of get into your background. How did you get into real estate?
Well, it's been a while. 26 years of selling. And also before that, I was a title insurance underwriter and senior title insurance underwriter, as well as working for a settlement company. So there's a lot of different things that I've always been in real estate. Let's just put it that way in most of my adult life.
Great. Gotcha. And when you first got started, how did you start to gain clients?
It was very different when I first got started. So it was very analog-y when I first got started. Now it's a lot more, I know AI is a thing and I know all that kind of stuff. I usually hire people to help me with those things because I don't have time for it, because I want to be able to make sure that my clients are served well, as well as running the brokerage. But when we first got in, it was very different. It's very different in many ways. It was very different in the way we had to represent our clients. It was very different in the way we were marketing. There was such a thing as knocking on doors back then, and now it's knocking on the digital door, so to speak.
Yeah, so if you could kind of give us some insight, how do you handle business development right now?
With mainly my sphere of influence and trying to keep, people people forget about their realtor, pretty much once the fraud the real estate transaction is over and done with, and it's they have a tendency to forget about them. So we have systems in place that allow us to be able to set reminders, continue conversations with them via text and email, and be able to give them some sort of value in regards to what are the market conditions right now and stuff like that.
Okay, got it. Highlight your podcast. I think it was episode 9. You were talking about some data from 2024, and I'm just wondering how things. I know it seems like forever ago, but how's real estate changed now that a year and a half later, a year later? What do you see now? Like, what are you talking to your buyers and sellers about that maybe is different in 2025?
So there's a lot of misinformation out there. And that's one bad thing about being able to use the internet to answer almost anything. I know it's going to probably be getting better, but at the same time, it's sometimes false information. One of the pieces of information is, and this is what's been helpful in with National Association of Realtors, actually, even though they did I think, a poor job in regards to defending themselves and defending the big dogs in that Missouri class action lawsuit that is all of that ends up being it's like the elephant in the room every time you walk in the room with a particular buyer or seller, or they walk into your office, or they, answer the phone call or whatever. And that's the elephant in the room. And it's like, why do I have to pay you?
Right.
You know? And I'm like, well, that's because that's how we get paid. We get paid a percentage of the transaction in most cases, unless you want to hire me for, $120 an hour to have a conversation with me, just like you would with an attorney. That's the only way that, but attorneys mostly are charging more like $420 an
Right.
hour. So you're getting a pretty good deal. How do you get paid as a realtor is the elephant in the room. And that's what has changed probably the most. But I can say, being in Virginia all this time throughout my whole career, Virginia was required all of us were required to have a buyer broker agreement. And I can take you back in history in the 1970s when there was no such thing as a buyer broker. The only real estate that was transacted was for the seller. The seller was the only client. And those class action lawsuits made changes in the 1980s.
Right. Right. You had mentioned the sphere of influence. Do you rely on online leads or any way to get clients, or is there any other marketing that you're doing besides just the people that you already know?
Well, I'll tell you that marketing is for online. The odds are so much against you in so many ways. I do a little bit of everything, but I don't do a whole lot of online marketing. And as far as lead generation, like paying for leads, that's a whole different story. You pay for leads, and what you're doing is basically trying to buy back your own listings. The best thing to do is just to hang on to your own, your sphere of influence, your own clients, and get those buyers who eventually, 5 to 7 years down the road will become sellers more than likely, and make sure that they're always in touch with you instead of your competitor. But how do you build that client base to begin with? That's kind of hard because right now it's very difficult to do. So what's happening is you get the millennials and the Gen Zers and the, so forth, the, people half my age, and they are coming into this business, and they're paying gobs of money towards either places like Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, Homes.com, all these guys. And what I'm finding is that Zillow's become they're violating all kinds of class action kind of lawsuits that we were accused of. And now they're doing the same. They're doing worse, because if you become a member of Zillow, you're giving up 30 to 60% of your commission. If you become a member as a realtor, if you try to do it on your own, which is what they're trying to get you to do as a consumer, they're trying to get you to avoid realtors, and so that they can have their own platform as being the MLS of the United States. And unfortunately, something like that is, to me, a complete violation of all kinds of antitrust laws. And they're getting away with it when the Missouri class action lawsuit wasn't even about that. It was about making sure, it was about a client who basically said, it wasn't my client, but a client who basically said, I'm going to list my house for sale. I'm going to pay the agent, and then I'm going to let that agent take half of that percentage and pay the buyer's agent. And then they sold the house. You had two realtors involved, listing agent, buyer's agent. And essentially, I assume that maybe because that whole thing started, had to have been because they didn't really understand what they were signing. And I think that is another in the side of digital businesses, because if you have all these electronic signing platforms that you can choose from, everything from .loop to DocuSign to everything, and even PDFs now, Adobe Acrobat, you can sign those now. Have you really read it? Do you really understand it? Have you read the fine print? Possibly not.
Most likely not.
Yeah. And so what that means is, if they didn't understand that there was cooperative brokerage involved, and the judge put the gavel on it and said, yeah, they probably didn't, so, and it's your fault, realtors, whoever you were that, in the plaintiff situation, because they were going to go for the big dogs. They weren't going for just the realtors. They were going for the big dogs because they smelled money. I think it was the Seitzer's next door neighbor was the dude who, started the whole thing, and I think he was the attorney involved. Let's put it this way: if you've got, I think it's like $5.5 billion now that has gone, out there, is they get at least 33.33% of that. The attorneys do. That's wait a minute, and I can't make my 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. Wait, what?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's kind of the Wild West right now, isn't it?
it's definitely a difficult. It put us in a difficult situation, and even when this happened during Biden's presidency, and he kind of took credit for it, saying that this is now going to make housing affordable. It did nothing but the opposite. And quite frankly, as a buyer's agent, I can now negotiate my own fee without having to without having to look in the MLS and see what the seller is willing to pay me. I can negotiate I'm actually, as a buyer's agent, making more money than I was before. And that's because there's no cooperative brokerage. You just, put what you want, what your buyer agency compensation says into the contract, or the buyer pays it, or the seller pays it, or whichever way you negotiate it.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. You had mentioned something earlier about, you had some clients that are going to hopefully be sellers in 5 to 7 years. How do you stay in touch with those people so you're top of mind when that day comes?
So usually digitally, happy birthday cards, or at least especially if you're on a social media account with them. Just make sure they know you know when their birthday is, or even when their house anniversary is.
Right.
And that's actually one thing that we try to recognize folks with. Also, if you see them on social media and they just had their first baby, or they, just got married or whatever, just be active, on that as well. The other thing is, quite frankly, we have a really good newsletter that is very filled with very good information about the market, about uh, certain things that are going on in the marketplace, as well as everything that you can, um, tips and tricks and things of that nature. And also, if they start coming back in, 5, 7 years later, whatever, and they're starting to look at things, then we develop a search alert for them around that criteria. And but also we also look they also might want to look at just what their house equity might be. And those are things where maybe we'll just send you neighborhood information that you'll be able to say, oh, wow, well, my neighbor sold for, and maybe that means I'll be able to sell for that. Or maybe that means, I should check in with Cynthia.
You had mentioned a couple doing it physically. Do you guys have a CRM tool, or do you have
Yes.
experience using those? Okay, and you
Well,
use that.
yes, that tool we were able to use and go back and, we can set reminders for ourselves to, yeah, either call, text, or email. It will automatically do some campaigns that we've built into it and send campaigns to them as well. I think knowledge is power. I think the loyal person, let me just put it that way, the loyal person, the good person, the person with integrity will come back to the person where they have learned the most about the real estate market.
Yep. Yep. I would agree there. You had mentioned about being connected to people on social media. Do you guys create any content of your own for social media or blogs? I mean, you'd mentioned the newsletter, but is there anything else you're doing for that?
Yeah, we do blogs quite a bit, and we also have the Reality of Real Estate radio show, and that's developed into kind of like a podcast, but it's informational. And it's also like, frankly, in my first few episodes of the Reality of Real Estate, I go through the whole class action lawsuit thing and try to explain to folks what was that really all about? Because they're not really, things haven't changed a whole heck of a lot. It's changed about, like, you can't see things like the MLS can't put in there is no clause anymore or any button to press to see, how much the listing or the seller is willing to pay out of the listing agent's commission. None of that exists anymore. But at the same time, I think everyone needs to be able to pivot when things like this happen. You have to be able to pivot. And so what we've done with our blogs, with the Reality of Real Estate radio show and podcast, uh, it's about educating the consumer. There's a lot of things in there. People don't know what they don't know. And the old saying about, well, what you don't know won't hurt you is a bunch of malarkey.
What about for reaching people that like you had mentioned about, different generations, younger generations. What about those people that are on social media or watching videos? Do you guys do any type of targeting of those people, whether it's like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook?
Yeah, we do have some geo targeting that we're doing. I think you could spend a lot of money doing a lot of different things and ignoring your own sphere of influence, which is not a good thing to do. And so we try to balance it as best we can so that we end up having something that is viable and that people will trust us. Because quite frankly, I think the people that pick up their phone nowadays is actually a good thing. And so that's what we do. And we pick up the phone, we call you, we keep you posted. Client right just today said, "Wow, thank you so much for keeping us posted." Just communication. And I think that's important for most people. Honestly think that the people that fire their agent, let's call it, okay, they let their agreement expire and so forth. Sometimes that's just the fact that there's not good communication. A lot of people will point the finger at the realtor. Oh, it's the realtor's fault. But if the lack of communication can go both ways. And if you don't understand, and that's the thing, be open to your realtor, be open to conversation. If you don't understand something, don't assume the worst. If you don't understand something, don't assume the best. Communication is key.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you guys ever repurpose your podcast into content for like your website or emails? Because I think there's a lot of good information there that people, because not everybody likes podcasts, obviously. So I was just wondering if you guys repurpose that at all.
Repurpose it. We do it kind of within our sphere, but not necessarily. I think we do some LinkedIn, we do some Facebook, we do some, I think, X. I would say more Facebook than anything, though. And then also we do, our blogs are also repurposing that, bringing people back to our website. That's kind of the main purpose, is to be able to capture that lead and start communicating with them.
Is there any part of your business, any tasks that you do that take up time and just don't generate revenue?
Yes, there's plenty of that. If you've ever been a principal broker, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of being able to educate your agents. You have to educate your agents. It's as simple as that. If they're not on the same page and they're not understanding how to do their business, then they don't understand how to. I'm here to help them succeed. And if I'm not helping them succeed, I feel like a failure. And if I don't educate them on how to use our systems, then our systems are just being, money thrown away. So I do have folks on my brokerage that actually help other agents with those systems and how to implement them and how to keep them from just sitting there and growing digital rust.
You kind of, as you look forward in the next 1 to 2 years, obviously you have a lot going on, but are you looking, I'm trying to grow the team, grow the business, specialize? Have you thought about like where my focus is for the next 1 to 2 years?
Well, we specialize in residential. I'd like to probably stick with that. We do a little bit of commercial. Residential does include vacant land, by the way. As I don't do I think property management is really a very, very, it's very different. It's busy, lots and lots of busy work. And and the revenue is not large, not even satisfactory in my opinion, unless you've got dozens of places that housing that you are in charge of as a property manager. So I kind of let the property managers of the world stay in their wheelhouse when it comes to that. One thing I will say, I'll warn people about is the fact that there are issues with, like a property management agreement. And they'll have a property management agreement that says specifically in a paragraph that if you ever go to sell your house, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, then you have to use us to sell your house. And I think in those cases, I think the property manager should not require that, because I think if I'm going to stay in my wheelhouse, not being a property manager, then you might want to stay in your wheelhouse, not being a in residential sale. But that's kind of the way I feel. I don't have enough personally. I will help people with property management, mostly procuring tenants, but I have to already know you and so forth, because I don't want to get into the escrow situations with security deposits and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So property managers are worth their weight in gold if you got to go to.
Okay, great. Maybe one or two more questions. Have you guys ever considered, maybe you're using it right now, use any AI tools, AI driven tools for whether it's follow up or marketing, or are you guys doing it the way you've always done it?
So what we currently have as far as follow up is what we've created already. So it's not an AI thing. But as far as AI goes, I mean, we kind of use that on a regular basis, just doing our business, emails, property descriptions, things of that nature. So I haven't kind of dove into it yet as far as using AI for multiple other ways. I, I think because it's already there in our CRM and it's already available to us in our CRM. That's probably why we haven't spent a gobs of money on using AI for other things. such as trying to stay in touch with with our database, the customers in our database.
Yeah, I think it's a little overwhelming for people. There's so many tools out there. I mean, I was having a conversation with a realtor recently, and I just said, whatever you're trying to do, there is a way to automate it. And there's
There's
a
a way
couple
to what?
steps. There's a way to automate it.
Automate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so whatever you wanna do, there's a way to make it happen. It's just you have to be willing to do it, because I think a lot of people in real estate have gone, "Well, we've done it this way for so long, it's worked." But I've just seen how it's made an effect on realtors' business, and it's been pretty interesting,
Mhm.
the number of tools that are out there. But I get it from a realtor side because there's so much information out there. You kinda want it distilled in a way that's easy to understand.
And we do have automated, so we have, it depend when you say AI, it makes me think of things like, I don't know, sort of crazy stuff like a robot taking you to the house to show you the house or something, That's kind of what I was saying. But from a CRM standpoint and keeping in touch and things like that, all of that's automated. So we do have campaigns, we do have scripts, we do have all of those things that whatever is available. But then again, you can spend so much money on things that aren't making you money.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me, Cynthia. I really appreciate the time today.
Thank you.
All right, great.